PIXAR Studios, arguably the biggest powerhouse in modern animation with 24 movies currently under their belt and a whole load of classics. No matter how old you are or who you are, the likelihood is you're going to love a few of their movies. How could you not? Their stories and characters have become such an iconic part of cinema over the last 25 years, and rightly so. We've got a lot of movies to talk about today, so let's not waste any time and let's get right into the ranking. I apologise in advance because there's a fair few controversial opinions on here, but without further ado, let's start with the worst Pixar movie to date. The Good Dinosaur. Look guys, I don't condone bullying, but I just have to say, if there's one movie that deserves to be thrown into a locker every now and then, it's this one. There are like 2 good scenes in this film and the rest of it is annoying, meandering, and embarrassing. Like they really thought this movie had an emotional ending. Shame on them. I couldn't care less about this stupid dog boy and this whiny dinosaur who spends the whole movie cowering at stuff. It's confused, it's boring, it's not funny, and it's films like this that lead people to think that animation is just for kids. Cars 3. Okay, this ranking is about to get a little bit weird, but bear with me here. Upon finishing Cars 3 for this video, I actually thought it was the best of the trilogy. It was shorter and faster paced than the first one, and not as dumb or annoying as the second one, but looking back on it just a few days later, all I feel is numbness. The fact that this trilogy even exists baffles me, and in my opinion it's the biggest stain on Pixar's legacy. Like, they didn't just make one dull and stupid movie, they made 3 of them, and Cars 3 being the last in the trilogy kind of embodies how drawn out and painful this series was to me. And beyond that, anything else I want to say also kind of applies to the first movie, so let's talk about Cars. If you want proof that a movie can tick all of the right boxes that a movie should and still be boring, lifeless and forgettable, Cars is your movie. I will never understand how this is both the longest Pixar movie, give or take, and only one of 2 to spawn a trilogy. I've never seen so much fine in one film. Lightning's arc, it's fine. The message, it's fine. The racing sequences, they're fine. They're all good things that are dampened down because of the mediocre and half-hearted package they're wrapped in. The film also takes its message of enjoying the slow life too seriously because, oh my god, does it move so slow. This franchise just seems to be the product of an overconfident Pixar, assuming and almost telling the audience how iconic the Radiator Springs gang is in every movie when they didn't even bother to lay the groundwork for that in this one. I'm not saying anything new here, but it's true that the concept of living cars is so fundamentally flawed, and Cars 1 and 3 simply aren't engaging or self-aware enough to make up for that. Cars 2. Yeah, you're not seeing this wrong. This isn't an editing mistake. Cars 2 is the most entertained I was watching a Cars movie. Yes, Mater is an annoying protagonist. Yes, the whole spy plot is dumb. Yes, the message is shoved in there. Yes, Michael Caine and Emily Mortimer are awful. And yes, the writing is terrible. I know what needs to be done. Then do it. What? No, I can't do it. Nobody takes me seriously. I know that now. This ain't Radiator Springs. Yes, it is. You're yourself in Radiator Springs. And if people aren't taking you seriously, then they need to change, not you. I know that because I was wrong before. But there are 2 ways an animation studio can pump out a film they don't care about. They can half-heart everything from the script to the performances, or they can just throw crazy plot point after crazy action sequence together to keep the kids happy for an hour and 40 minutes. And you know what? If a film is going to be dreadful, I'd rather take the second option. There's a kind of beauty to the terribleness of Cars 2. This franchise was never going to live up to Pixar's other work, so why not just make it as off-the-wall crazy as possible? Sure, it doesn't make sense for Lightning and gang to be involved in a spy plot, but it actually makes surprising sense to introduce that genre to this franchise because of the importance of cars in most spy movies. And because of that, while it's objectively the worst of the trilogy, I by far enjoyed Cars 2 the most. Brave. Brave is okay. Seeing the response this movie has garnered, I was expecting to walk into an absolute cinematic disaster. But guys, I don't think it's that bad. But also in saying that, it's not that great either. The plot structure and morals are messy with some forgettable characters and not much to remember walking away from it, but where others are infuriated by this film's existence, I'm fine with it existing, even if I don't have a great deal to say about it. I don't think it's a terrible movie by any stretch of the imagination, it's just not all that amazing, especially when compared to the rest of Pixar's library. A Bug's Life. If I had no idea when each of these films were released, I think I could guess that A Bug's Life was one of Pixar's first movies. Not because of the animation, which is still pretty decent by today's standards, but because it doesn't offer much more beyond its detailed landscapes and use of light. If no other animated movies existed, this film would be pretty impressive, but in 2021, when we've had films like Soul or Into the Spider-Verse, which not only have much better animation but also complex themes, memorable characters, better comedy and more engaging stories, A Bug's Life doesn't feel like it's accomplishing a whole lot. Instead, it feels like a tech demo where plot and character came second to proving Pixar's capability in the realm of animation. Hopper's still a fucking badass though, so it's not all doom and gloom. Luca. If you've seen my quickfire review of Luca, you pretty much know how I feel about it, because my opinion hasn't changed all that much. Where the film wins you over so much with its charm, there's not a lot to latch onto once you start peeling back the layers. It's got a nice message for sure, but the stakes are as low as they get, and the conflicts are the same. This is a great film for kids, and unlike The Good Dinosaur, it still has some stuff for adults to enjoy, but you're going to get so much more out of the films higher on this list than you are this one. Monsters University. Is Monsters University necessary? No. But is it fun? Yeah. What could have been an easy cash grab thankfully has enough heart and creativity behind it that it doesn't taint the Monsters Inc. name. The side characters aren't as likeable this time around, but Mike and Sully are still on their A game, as is a lot of the visual comedy. Not only that, but the ending hits pretty hard too, and I buy the progression of the main duo's friendship. At the end of the day, this doesn't add a whole lot to Pixar's body of work, but it doesn't take away anything either, and that's the important thing at this point in the list. Finding Dory. This was a lot better than I was expecting it to be when it first came out. Again, when it was announced, it just sounded like another cash grab, but the writers do a good job at convincing you that this story is important to the progression and happiness of our main characters. Yeah, some character regression at the beginning doesn't give the story its greatest start, but the second and third acts are just as exciting and emotional as you'd expect from a Finding movie. There's some strong new characters in Hank and the Sea Lions, the set pieces are creative and fun, and the cast all bring their A game. There are a few minor issues here and there that hold this back from being as good as the original, but overall, Finding Dory is one of the few movies that proves Pixar sequels can work. Coco. Alright, hold your horses. I like Coco. In fact, from Finding Dory onwards, I think all of these movies are solid. I agree with the general consensus that the music is great, Miguel is a fun character, and the animation is gorgeous. Yes, the ending hits hard and we all know that, but the rest of the movie is kind of a slog. Let me explain myself. My biggest issue with a good handful of Pixar movies is their second act. As memorable as their characters may be, as emotional as their endings usually are, and even with their great concepts and setups, a good chunk of Pixar's library involves a second act where the characters are simply getting from A to B. Coco, Onward, Inside Out, Up, Finding Nemo, Soul, etc., they all do it. But the reason it bothers me most in Coco is because I just don't think it has the comedy or the action or iconic enough characters to keep that middle portion of the script entertaining. I like this movie, I promise I do, but at the end of the day, I just don't think it clicked for me like it did for so many others, and its strengths can only get it so high for me. Also, I forgot to mention this in the video, but the twists were really obvious. Onward. Onward is one of Pixar's latest films, and a lot of people don't seem to be too in love with it. I, on the other hand, yeah, I like it quite a bit. I find this world that forgot about magic not only beautiful but intriguing, and the way that's crafted into the main theme of the film just made the whole emotional journey of the story work for me. I was really invested in the family dynamic the film had going on, and the ending just gave me goosebumps. Jesus, watching a van crash itself gave me goosebumps. That just shows how much this film made me care. Yeah, it's a little bit rough around the edges script-wise, and some of the plot progressions aren't exactly original, but hey, I like the main characters, I like the animation, I liked the emotional beats, I liked the humour, making Onward a pretty solid Pixar outing in my book. WALL-E. Again, I feel like I'm going to have to ask you guys to hear me out here, but it's completely undeniable how magnificently impressive this film is. The visual storytelling, the almost mute yet iconic main characters, the themes, the messages, the locations, are all some of the best stuff that Pixar has ever put out there. But what holds this film back for me is the actual story itself. The ideas here are amazing, but when you boil it down, a majority of WALL-E is just, oh shit, there's this thing that I need to run away from or run towards. Shave 15 minutes off of this thing, and you've got a top 5 Pixar movie for me, but there's only so many scenes of robots making funny beep noises I can sit through before I start to get bored. That felt really mean, especially for a film with so much brilliance within it. But at this point, a lot of these movies are neck and neck in quality, so the smallest of complaints is going to have to be the decider that brings some of these down. And what can I say? I just find these other movies a tiny bit more entertaining. Up. Up deserves every single bit of praise it's received for its emotional impact and especially for its opening. The first 20 minutes of this thing feel like a Scorsese movie. It's written and directed to perfection. I've already had my second act rant, so you can probably guess I'd think the middle portion lets this film down a little, but once you walk away from Up, you have so much to bring with you. The characters are rich and likeable, the humour all works, and again, can we just talk about those emotions? Pete Docter is by far one of the best directors working at PIXAR, and even though this is my least favourite of his, it's still an absolute powerhouse of a film. Inside Out. I don't have much to say about this movie that hasn't already been said before, but bravo to Inside Out for exploring the complexities of emotion in a kids' film without ever feeling cheesy or heavy-handed. Sure, it's not the most subtle thing in the world, but it never feels like the writers and director are pandering to their audience. Just like he'd go on to do in Soul, Pete Docter uses this intriguing premise to explore heavy questions and deliver unorthodox messages. It's stuff like this that makes sure audiences always have faith that PIXAR are going to keep us entertained with their well thought out and heartfelt productions. Toy Story 4. Okay, I didn't see this coming. If you've been around on this channel for a while, you'll have seen me throw shade at this film a couple of times now. It pissed me off so much on a first watch that for the longest time, I was adamant I wouldn't give it the time of day and rewatch it for this video. But I eventually gave in, and am I glad I did. Don't get me wrong, I'm still pissed off that they made Buzz an idiot, I still wish the original characters had more to do, I still think it pales in comparison to the conclusion that Toy Story 3 provided, and I'm still not in the camp of people that consider this essential for Woody's arc coming to an end. But I do now realise that it has enough strengths to make it another solid entry in the Toy Story series. Even if it does have to betray some of what was established in earlier films, the themes at play here are just as interesting as those we've seen before, and seeing Woody battle with the concept of not being wanted just makes me love him even more. The atmosphere this film creates with its perfect animation and patient writing feels so real and easy to connect with. That scene of Woody and Forky walking down the road together just wraps me up in a blanket of movie niceness. There's something about it I just love so much. So well done Toy Story 4, you charming bastard. You managed to pull me over from the dark side, and I can now officially say that I love every single Toy Story movie. Finding Nemo. Where to start with this movie? Finding Nemo is a notion in itself that pulls you in, and no matter how hard you want to swim away, you just can't. It's terrifying when it wants to be, the humour doesn't miss, you care about every one of these characters, it's all iconic, and it's got some amazing set pieces. The music and animation is so immersive and holds up just as well today as it did back in 2003. You feel like you're underwater with these guys, and you're with them on every step of their journey. Shark Tale? Could never. The Incredibles 2. Something is telling me that this is probably one of the hotter takes on this list, and honestly, I get it. I see all the flaws everyone else sees. I agree that the script feels unfinished and in desperate need of a polish. I too cannot forgive the awful character designs of these new superheroes, but Jesus do I love being in the world of The Incredibles. As someone who wasn't a huge fan of The Incredibles as a kid, I was blown away by this film when I first saw it upon release. The crisp animation, the vibrant locations, the awesome action, and the banter between the characters wins my heart over in minutes. There's nothing quite like the energy of an Incredibles movie, and no amount of clunky writing could ever take that away. My main ask with both superhero and animated films is that at the very least they keep me completely entertained, and The Incredibles 2 does that job perfectly. What a blast. Toy Story 2. I've never, ever met anyone who doesn't like Toy Story 2, and there's a good reason for that. Even though I have it the tiniest smidge behind the first, it still does everything a great sequel should. The side characters have a little more to do other than try and kill Woody the whole movie. It introduces even more iconic characters to the franchise. Everyone has progressed from where they were in the first. These Toy Story movies are just so good at building off of one another. The first movie was obviously responsible for making these characters iconic, but it's because Toy Story 2 maintained the same level of quality whilst raising the stakes and including more innovative action sequences that this franchise became one of the most well-regarded of all time. Toy Story. Where the second movie beats Toy Story in terms of action and character presence, the first one just wins me over with its faster pace and sense of humour. This film is crazy, like the uncut gems of the Pixar library. Everyone and everything is trying to kill Woody, and it's hilarious and tense without ever swapping out its heart. Undeniably, that's the main aspect that's kept this franchise so strong throughout, the heart, and you can see they had that right from the beginning. Buzz's journey in this film is probably my favourite arc in this series, playing with every single emotion possible. Look, it's a classic, you all know it. I feel sorry for anyone who hasn't seen it, and there couldn't have been a better start to Pixar as a studio. Monsters Inc. You got Mike and Sully, you got Boo, you got Randall, you got Waternoose, you got My Little Schmootsy Poo. Monsters Inc. is so iconic and so great from beginning to end, Pete Docter once again coming through with an amazing concept. The imagination of this film cannot be denied, and the chemistry between the characters and the emotional conclusion gives it an easy home run. It's one of the less deep Pixar movies, but it's jam-packed full of love and life to the point where it doesn't need to deal with heavy existential themes to be great. Once again, one of Pixar's earlier movies and still one of their best, even if it's only the second greatest thing to come out of 2001. Ratatouille. Brad Bird is just a genius when it comes to his animated films. The way he makes these larger-than-life ideas and grounds them without taking away their unique identity never gets old. Ratatouille comes with a great message too, and the perfect protagonist to tell that story. I'm kind of running out of ways to say these movies are amazing now, but yeah, Ratatouille deserves to be watched by every human on this planet, and it's a perfect example of what animation as an art form is capable of. That montage set to Les Festines? That's what movies are all about. Soul. Who would have thought that Pixar would be able to put out a movie in 2020 that would rival their original classics like Toy Story, Monsters Inc. and Ratatouille? Soul just spoke to me on a level that movies, animated or not, rarely do. It's as charming as Pixar's lighter work while at the same time being one of the most existential films I've ever seen. That scene with Joey at the piano hits different, with a capital D. While it hinges on a few typical tropes, it never for 1 second feels generic, always earning its story beats and making them essential to the message and character. Once again, Soul is showing off animation as an art form, something to present larger than life stories in a way that feels authentic and convincing. Tell Soul in a live action form and it falls apart straight away, but here it absolutely thrives. The Incredibles. Yeah, you all knew this would be high. The Incredibles is so human yet so imaginative and out of this world. In terms of the superhero genre, even 17 years later it feels like it has its own completely distinct personality. Once again, Brad Bird grounds these characters so much that you don't even see them as characters. You see that big CGI man who can lift trains as a human being and a close friend. The conflicts are nuanced and again original, the setup and payoff is mature in its patience, and it's so full of imagination and creativity. It's The Incredibles, do I need to say more? Toy Story 3. This is it, as close to perfection as Pixar has ever gotten. You've heard me gush about this before, and I'm gonna gush about it again. I love Toy Story 3. No, sorry, let me say that again. I fucking love Toy Story 3. Every fibre of this movie speaks to me in a way no other animated film does. Sure, Into the Spider-Verse may be my favourite, but Toy Story 3 actually affects me as a person every time I watch it. I'm watching these toys as if they're my toys. I feel an attachment to every single one, which is incredible considering how little a lot of these guys have actually done in the grand scheme of things. This story puts you through every emotion you can possibly feel. I'm not a crier when it comes to movies, but no movie has brought me closer to tears than this one. It actually physically hurts me how much this film gives me goosebumps. My love for Toy Story 3 is a gut reaction. It's like trying to describe why your favourite meal tastes so good. There are no words, and I can do nothing but thank Pixar for crafting a film with so many laughs, so many tears, so much imagination, and an endless amount of heart. So there you go guys, there's all 24 Pixar movies ranked. Let me know what you thought of my ranking and which of my picks you hated the most, and be sure to comment what are your favourite Pixar movies down below. While you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.